So why visual communication strategies? Well, as I say, we've already discussed communication involves taking in information, it involves processing, it involves making meaning of it, it involves organising a response and planning the output of that response. So there's the potential for breakdown at any stage in that. We've also got the difficulty shifting and re-establishing attention. We've got the difficulty attending to relevant sound and blacking out any background noise. Now, without looking left, somebody sneezed there, but it didn't stop me being able to talk. But if my attention is not at the level where I won't be easily distracted, that might be just enough to knock me off kilter. And also, we've talked about the transient and non-transient messages. So, very important, no matter what we're doing, visual communication strategies will only be valuable if there's going to be meaning derived from them. So they have to be easily recognised, they have to be easily understood, and they have to be universally understood. There's no point in you and I having our own little communication system because someday maybe I'll not be here and somebody else will have to understand us, or you, or me, or whatever. So what are we going to do? What do we want to be able to achieve out of our communication strategies? We've got to help our children and young adults to know where to go. We have to help them to understand what to do, what comes next, how to do it, when to move, what are my choices, what can I do, what can't I do, and how much can I have? And you know what? If you crack all that, and how do I know when I'm finished, you'll be doing very well. Let's again think about this from our own perspective. If you had been invited to come here today and somebody, Zara, had sent you a letter to say, I want you all at juries at 10 o'clock and gave you no more information, your anxiety levels would close, or your anxiety levels would rise. That door would close and you'd be thinking, what's going to happen? How long is she going to talk for? When's she going to be finished? What are my choices? Will I listen to her? Will I listen to Heather from Camp Hill Community? Or we've got that expert Ben from somewhere else. So you know what to expect because that's all being communicated to you. And you'll also know when we're all going to be finished. The traditional tools for organising giving information. Just want to think about this for one little minute. Some of you will be saying to yourself here, but I really want my child to be able to talk. You know, I'm not sure that I really want to focus on visual communication strategies because after all, how useful is that going to be? We use visual communication strategies and tools for organising ourselves and giving us information every day, every minute of every day. We have calendars, we have daily planners and organisers. How many of you have a diary in your handbag at the moment? Well, if I lose my diary, I don't know where I'm going Monday. If I don't have my diary in work, I couldn't tell you what I'm doing Monday afternoon. Daily planners, organisers, TV. How many of you look at the TV guides? Entertainment guides, shopping lists. Who sticks post-it notes up around their fridge and in the kitchen? You see, you're organising yourself there. Menus, signs, labels, maps, checkbooks, bank statements, bad one, telephone books, address books, assembly instructions, operating instructions. All of those are traditional tools for organising and giving information. What do you need in order to communicate? Just a little recap. We need the sender. Most important, you need the context or the reason. We can't expect anybody to want to communicate unless they have a reason to communicate or they're in a situation where communication is required, and then you have the receiver. So just think, how am I doing for time?
Great, you can take your time, we're ahead of the start.
That's okay. Schedules. So going back to what we were talking about, what reasons do we have to communicate? Where do I have to be? What do I have to do? What will I do when I get there? How much can I do? And what are my choices and how much can I have and how do I know I'll be finished? What we would do quite often is use a schedule, which will tell you where to be. Sorry, I want to go back. I don't want to go into work systems yet. So thinking about the object level of communication, you can actually organise somebody's day using objects. Another way to look at a schedule is like a timetable or a planner. So if you want somebody to get up in the morning, you want them to go to the bathroom, you want them then to have a cup of tea, and then, let's say for the sake of argument, the bus is coming, so you have your bag. What I would suggest to some of my families is you go to IKEA and you get, one of those little plastic boxes, there's like a little shelf and there's little boxes in them. Well, I just take out the basket, put in a bit of cardboard, and that's the first thing you do in the morning, that's the next thing you do in the morning, and here's the next thing. So immediately our individuals can see what's going to happen now, what's going to happen next, and how do I know I'm finished at home and I'm going to school, and that's going to take me to school. Now, sometimes what we can also do is introduce what we would call a transition object. And a transition object can just be a card, so that if I hold this up to somebody, finish means you're going on to the next thing, which happens to be snack. Now, again, this is a whirlwind trip through this. There's lots of trainings that talk about this, so this is just a taster. So if you're all getting bewildered, tell me. I'll be here till 2 o'clock and I'll talk to you about it. So that's the schedule. You can organise somebody's day. You can also organise somebody's day using pictures, or you can even stick small icons onto a bit of Velcro. Or you can just use one thing at a time, as long as you can make your message easily understood, recognised, and at a level where the other individual can respond to you. The next thing we would think about is work systems. So your schedule will take you to where you have to be. Your work system, when you get there, will tell you what you have to do. So if, in Angela's case, remember I was talking about Angela, her plate got us to the dinner table. At the dinner table, we would have had a work system. Now, in her case, it would have been a table mat with a stencil on the table mat of a picture of a plate and an outline of a knife and a fork. So Angela immediately could see, there's where I sit, there's where I put my plate, and there's where I put my knife and fork. It was a simple matching activity. It was like one-to-one correspondence task, but it was functional. It was age appropriate for somebody who was, in their late 30s, but it was meaningful because then she's going to have her lunch. So think about schedules and think about work systems. Work system will tell you what to do when you get there. Oh, here, I've pressed the wrong buttons. So, how are we going to teach these? First thing is, there's no rule for anybody. I'm telling you about a few principles. We're going to teach this by first and foremost individualising everything we do. We have to look at an individual's strengths and an individual's weaknesses, but most importantly, that individual's interests. So, taking Angela again, and God love her ears will be burning, up in Castlewellan, she was driven by her food. So it was good to teach communication around the medium of food. So it was individualised for her. We knew she was good visually. We knew she could understand objects. We knew that she could get herself around. So we used her strengths, we used her interests, and we were trying to overcome the weakness that she wasn't able to actually ask for dinner herself when she needed it. Are you with me so far? So you individualise it. Then you teach it in the most meaningful place for the most meaningful purpose. I remember as a young, very smart speech and language therapist, because when you come straight out of college and you think you know it all. I now realise I know nothing, but I didn't in those days. And I would have taken children in the school I worked in, which was a school for children with severe learning disability, or in those days we called it mental handicap, and would have taken them down to this little room, and I would have taught them how to, put this on here and do this, and it was a very successful session in this little tiny room, and we walked back to the classroom and they could do nothing. Because I taught it out of context, it was completely meaningless. They quite enjoyed the one-to-one attention, but if you're trying to develop communication for functionality and for functional use, you teach communication in the place where somebody's going to use it. To take it back to a very low level, I'll tell you about my friend Colin, who's now about 30, and Colin was a very low functioning chap, and I used to try to I was working on eye contact. Would you do it now? No. Working on eye contact in a speech and language therapy room with all these really interactive pieces of equipment, and I could have been standing on my head and Colin wouldn't have looked at me. Then I would take him back to his classroom and the bell would ring and Colin would engage eye contact immediately. He'd go to the door. He didn't actually look at you, but as he was going down the playground to find something that attracted his attention stuck in a fence, he'd look round because he knew he shouldn't be doing that. Great eye contact. Now, who was the therapist there? So meaningful place for meaningful purpose. Create opportunities to practice over and over again. And this is important. Again, once you've got it, then you really have to keep practicing it, because if we go back to Angela and her plate, whatever, there was no point in me doing that one day and then, another daycare worker or somebody coming in the next day and not setting it up. And equally, there was no point in us teaching her to be able to do that in the day centre if her mum or her brother, who was also a carer, wasn't prepared to carry it on at home. So it has to be over and over again. And I hate IT. Another very important thing, make the use of communication systems independent. How many, and again, this takes us back to PECs. We need to be very careful when we're using PECs that we're not always doing hand over hand. We've got to withdraw as soon as we think they've got the idea of exchange, because you want somebody to be independent in their system and not dependent on you to make the system work. Otherwise, communication isn't independent. So if they're independent using objects, but they're not independent using picture exchange, then continue to practice the picture exchange using hand over hand, but allow them to be independent in their communication with objects. Very important, again, teach only one concept at a time. If you're going to work on exchange, well, then that's all you're going to work on. But if you try to introduce exchange, and like I would have done as a young therapist, bring in eye contact and bring in something else and something else, you're going to confuse people. In fact, you'll probably be confused yourself. So only teach one concept at a time. And again, if necessary, manipulate the environment to ensure the need to communicate is in place. Because if we had not, if everything had been in place, going back to Angela's example, where she just walked in and followed everybody at dinner time and everything was there for her, there was no need for her to communicate. So sometimes it might be in the kitchen, at home perhaps. Take an example of the much younger child. I would say to mums, where do you keep your fruit? Where do you keep your biscuits? Where do you keep your crisps? And they're all down, and the cupboard's down here. And I say, oh no, they're going to have to put them all up here so that your little one has to convey something to you to let them know you want something. And let's do it that way. And I will show you in a minute, if we have time, pictures of choice boards and pictures of how we do that. It was all very well until one day Mommy said to me, she said, "You're great." I said, "Thanks." She said, "No, I don't really mean it." And she said, "Now he's running along the kitchen work surface." So you always have to, just be, I'm telling you some theory and I'm telling you some fact. You also need to, put in some common sense here. And never be afraid to say, "Oh, sorry, didn't get that one right, let's try again." Let's put a lock on the cupboard, down low. And if it doesn't work, it's not their fault. You've pitched it too high. So reassess, restructure, and individualize. So specifically designed tools to meet specific needs. Well, I've told you about daily schedules. That's going to be your timetable, which is going to organize your day. I've told you about work systems, which is going to organise somebody when they get to the place. And again, it's a whirlwind tour. Haven't told you about help cards. How many of you with your family members constantly feel a little tug at the back? I need help, and they're not independent and they want something. Sometimes we would introduce a help symbol just to make it more appropriate, and we might use a little help card, or we might use a little help object, so that, again, if they're somewhere else, and we'd always have help written on it, so that a stranger would maybe understand that this individual needs help. We would use choice boards, because choice is a very difficult concept for many of our folk. We would use a travel schedule. I'll tell you a story about a little girl called Kerry, whose mummy was a single parent, and she used to take her into Lisburn. Now I'm allowed to tell this story. I have permission, by the way. If I use anybody's names, I'm not saying anything I shouldn't say out of school. And first thing she wanted to do was to go to McDonald's, because after all, the only thing you ever do when you get on the bus and go into Lisburn is to go to McDonald's. But her mummy went into Lisburn because she needed to do her messages for that day. She needed to go to the bank, she needed to do her shopping, whatever. And then, needless to say, Kerry would throw the temper tantrum. And we thought we would try this, and we would introduce a travel schedule. So we introduced bank, shop, and McDonald's, just two things. And as soon as Kerry could see where she was going, and we used like a logo from the bank, and we used a logo from McDonald's and a logo from the shop, because she couldn't read, but she could visually understand. So once that one was gone, it was ditched. Once the next one was gone, it was ditched. And then she could see, I'm going to McDonald's now. So there was no tantrum. So we thought, we'll chance her arm here, because another problem for her was she wouldn't use a loo outside of home. So there was a wee accident going home on the bus. So we went bank, shop, toilet, McDonald's. Cracked it. And it was because she understood what she had to do. We took away the language. We made it easier for her to understand, where am I going? What do I have to do? What comes next? And how do I know when I'm finished? And home you go. So they're great. We actually used a travel schedule for the same girl going on the plane. And her mummy was terrified. It was the first holiday they'd ever had. And the air hostess came down and said, where do you get those? I'd like them for half the children on the flight. A wait card. How many of you find waiting is very difficult? Because after all, what is waiting? Have to hang around here and do nothing for the next 5 or 10 minutes. Doctor surgeries, in the car in a traffic jam, all those sorts of things. Big one for some of them. Indeed. But another place that's difficult to wait is actually church or mass. Because again, some of our families don't understand why they're there. And as far as they're concerned, it's waiting. So we would introduce at that stage a visual communication strategy to help people understand this is waiting time. And we would perhaps use a waiting toy. And the only time that the children or the adults are ever allowed this, and I say toy, but it could be piece of equipment or waiting something, is when you're waiting. And I had the mum who had twins, and both of the twins had learning difficulties, and they actually had autism. And she said, the worst time for me is going through Downpatrick on a Friday afternoon when it's gridlock, and they're going mad in the back of the people carrier. What do I do? And we introduced 2 wee toys that she always kept under the car seat. And as soon as the car went to a stop, she'd hand them over to the twins, and they'd happily twiddle and fiddle and play and click and all the rest of it, because they had to be interesting. And then before she drove off, she'd take them back. And the boys understood, that means I wait. And she took them with her everywhere she went. And it was an object that said, what is happening now? And how do I know I'm finished? And it took away that confusion. What's happening now? Why are we not doing what I want to do? This is what you're doing. You're waiting. Now, just to illustrate visual communication strategies, this is my little cartoon. So if I hear it, I can forget it. If I see it, I'll probably remember it. If I do it, I'll begin to know it. And then when I discover it, I use it. So you've all been a great audience. I want you to select off this what you'd like as a snack. You see, none of you know what that is. But if I put this in, you'd have a wee hint of what you're going to get. So you can see how, unless we can make ourselves clear, we don't understand what's going on. Have you time for any of the photos or not?
Yeah, I think we can.
You sure? Because once I get started now, I could talk for Ireland.
Give me another 5 minutes.
And apologies now if I go off on a rant here. This is a schedule. Now, please just, before I show you these pictures, these are all things that I have made and used with children I've worked with. As I say, most of my clinical work now is within the field of autism spectrum disorder. But I do know that there are overlaps. And the key thing is that it's a communication deficit in autism. So that's where we're coming from. This is a picture, here, before I break my neck. This is a picture of a schedule. And this was a schedule for a little boy at home who used to have a tantrum because when he got up in the morning, he thought he could go straight and watch TV, and then he'd go onto the school bus. So what we have here is he has to get up in the morning, he has to go to the toilet, he has to wash his hands, go downstairs, eat my breakfast, go upstairs, clean my teeth, wash my face, put my clothes on, and then watch TV till the school bus comes. So it was organised for him. Now, don't get depressed because that's all written in a wee sentence. We have done the same with pictures, and we've done the same with objects. Once somebody has learnt how, to use the objects for communication. This is a picture schedule where the car, you're going in the car, you're going out, you're going for a walk, then you have your dinner, then you have your TV, and then you go to bed. That was a picture schedule for somebody who was an angel in school. How many of you have that? Oh, he's no bother in school. I don't know what your problems are at home. And then the minute the child goes in through the door, they're hitting the mum up the face with the school bag because they don't know what's going to happen now. So what we found was if we organised life in the home and the child knew what was going to happen, what's going to happen next, where I'm going to go and what I have to do. It took the bad behaviour away. This is an early morning schedule where you have to get up, something similar really. Get up in the morning, go to the toilet, wash your hands. This, by the way, is pre-board maker days. This is all my own work. Sorry, so if they look a bit Hicksville. Eat your breakfast and clean your teeth. One thing I would say to you is if you are going to make your own pictures, keep them dead simple, line drawings, black and white, because children will focus in on the wrong detail. I remember once taking photographs in an environment to use a communication schedule for watch TV, and I had the mum on the phone to me saying, I am going to go mad because all he wants to do is watch Mario Brothers. And I said, why is that? And she said, because you have it on the TV. I said, I didn't. So off I went out to see, reassess, restructure, my mistake, not the child's. Do you know what was on the bottom of the TV on the shelf? A video of Mario Brothers. He didn't see the TV. He saw the thing that interested him, so that was the thing he wanted. My mistake, so we just start again. This was a schedule for a child, you know, the angel in school, devil at home, who was great from Monday to Friday, but would start to get exercised at about Thursday night about what am I doing the weekend, where are we going the weekend, what am I doing the weekend, and rhyming, and you know. Now if they don't have language, maybe they start to get cranky on a Thursday night or a Friday night because they don't know what's happening next. So we used to use these and make it really big and really exciting about what was going to happen at the weekend. That's one that's produced commercially. That's from Icon. I can sit down, put your hands down, keep your mouth closed and wait. Now that might look a wee bit abrupt, but you get the message. You can make it bigger or smaller and you can use the words or not. But if it meant that that child was able to sit through the service, well, you know, that's another one of my beautiful ones. Now, here's a great, going back to my younger children or my less able clients, there's one thing that I think is absolutely superb. Instead of saying, when we've been down the street and I've been to your granny, I'm going to get you an ice cream. Too much language. Too much. I would say to my families, there's 3 rules that they have to learn. One is, first then. First you do this for me, and then you can have. So first you wash your hands, then you can have your car. And this was at an object level, okay? This was a child who didn't have language. But we're teaching him that positive routine. First you do this for me, and then you can have. So that's one rule. The other rule I would say is everything you do has a start, a middle, and a finish, so that it's organised and you're not finished till you're finished. And once you teach finish, instead of saying to somebody, will you stop behaving like that? I'm fed up of you shouting and roaring. You just use a very quiet finish. And you start to, am I finished?
That was a great segue.
There you are. You're missing the rest of my slideshow, but I'm sorry, I've got...
That communicates the picture.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Not at all.
Excellent.
Thank you.